Well, good morning. This is Ian R. Crane. It's the morning of Friday, 21st of December 2018. And I'd love to say it's a beautiful solstice, but here on the edge of the Lancashire moors, it's not actually raining, but the humidity is about 100%. So I'm actually getting drenched just standing here. It's a sort of type of weather that's unique to this part of the country, I think. Anyway, the shortest day of the year, so everything to look forward to as the days get longer. But of course, the chaos over the next few months is going to increase exponentially. And yesterday, of course, the country was kept distracted from more important things by Dronegate. This, of course, kicked off on Wednesday evening at about 9 o'clock with the suggestion that Gatwick Airport was closed down due to rogue drones. Now, it occurred certainly early enough on Wednesday evening to get into all of the national press yesterday. And you watching it unfold yesterday was absolutely farcical, because anyone who has been anywhere near a drone knows fine well that apart from the very, very high-end drones, even good quality professional drones coming in at sort of £1,000 plus have a flying time of about 20 minutes. That's if you want to preserve the battery. If you want to run the battery right down to empty, then you might be able to keep it aloft for 30 minutes. And the range, unless it's been extensively modified, the range on 2.4 gigahertz transmission is going to be probably an absolute maximum of about 2 kilometers. So anything beyond that is, of course, very high end and likely to be in the realm of a military type product. Well, yesterday, of course, whomever was flying this alleged drone was keeping thousands of passengers from getting off on their Christmas break. So what was really occurring here? Well, of course, at the moment it's speculation, but it's speculation based on a lack of hard evidence, because the paparazzi yesterday apparently were all over Gatwick, and yet nobody appears to have managed to get any kind of photograph or video footage, without photoshopping that is, of a drone anywhere near Gatwick Airport. So yesterday morning, when I spent a few minutes, maybe a bit longer, doing the initial research, I certainly smelt a very big rat. And as the day wore on and still the runways weren't opened and the military were called in to support Surrey and Sussex police in finding this rogue drone operator, then the rat got smellier still. So what do I think possibly occurred? Well, consider the possibility that there was a systemic system failure at Gatwick. Now, this isn't as crazy as it seems, because I think it was about 16 months ago, in September of 2017, then there was a meltdown of the Amadeus booking system, and this affected airports all around the world. Well, consider the possibility that there was something that affected the Gatwick systems here, and rather than incur the wrath of disgruntled passengers due to incompetent management or incompetent government, I mean, we know that the government is certainly incompetent, but the management of Gatwick probably wanted to do something to deflect any kind of responsibility from themselves, and certainly to avoid massive insurance claims from airlines and passengers. So somebody came up with the idea of a drone. Let's blame it on a drone. And of course, from that point, you have a manufactured crisis, and, you know, in the immortal words of Raym Emanuel, never let a good crisis go to waste. So here's an opportunity to demonize drones just before Christmas, when probably a lot of people are going to get drones in their stockings. So demonize drones, and let's use this as an opportunity to kick off the need for having all drones registered and all drone operators licensed. And, you know, let's start the process of putting legislation in place that effectively bans the public from putting any kind of aerial camera up in the skies to monitor the establishment. So, you know, hey, double whammy, huh? You know, you have managed to avoid attracting the negative attention to Gatwick management or their systems failure, and you also get the opportunity to initiate legislation to bring about control on drones. So, you know, yesterday what we saw was the apparent incompetence of Surrey and Sussex police and the incompetence of the military to track down a drone operator who, unless it was the military using satellite control, then it would have had to have been somebody literally within a very, very short radius of Gatwick Airport, and to keep flying the drone in and out for 33 hours. Give me a break. So here's the challenge. If anybody can find a genuine photograph taken yesterday of a drone at Gatwick Airport, then you know, hey, basically you've got the money shot, because you know that's the reason the paparazzi were down there yesterday, because the first person that could capture this drone was going to make out like a bandit for that photograph to the mainstream media. Well, it gets better, because the Sun and the Telegraph this morning, at least these are the two that I've seen, have blamed it on a rogue green eco warrior. So we have no drone, we have no identified suspect, but it's a rogue green eco warrior. So here we go, we let the manufactured crisis also demonize eco warriors. Now, it wouldn't surprise me if there was a certain Halambada pseudo organization up to this, because we know that they are more than capable of manipulating society on a low level. But you know, we're onto them now, and you know, so consequently, if they emerge with any kind of responsibility for this in any way, shape or form, then we'll certainly expose that in a big way. But the bottom line is, anything that you read in the media today about the DroneGate situation at Gatwick is atrocious journalism. It's all going to be based upon hearsay or narratives put out by the establishment. And you know, basically we need to start asking all the right questions, and those thousands of people that have had their Christmas breaks or pre-Christmas breaks ruined by not being able to land at Gatwick need to be asking the right questions. Because my suspicion is that the responsibility for Gatwick being shut for 33 hours lies a lot closer to home to the Gatwick management than it does to any supposed rogue green eco warrior with a remote control box, you know, somewhere within 2 to 3 miles of Gatwick Airport. And I think we're going to see more and more of this, because of course the other benefit of this was it took everything else off of the front pages. You know, the Brexit debacle, could it have been maybe keeping Theresa May's husband's tax affairs off the front pages? There's so many things right now that the establishment is desperate to keep out of the public domain, or certainly off the front pages, that you know, yesterday was a real good day to bury bad news. And I'm sure there was a lot of that going about, especially as sort of Parliament, of course, is about to go into its Christmas recess. So, Dronegate, it's a crisis. It's a manufactured crisis designed to have maximum impact on a significant chunk of the population who are unlikely to do any serious research. So anyway, there you go. That's my input. The other prospect, of course, is that by Monday, Tuesday of next week, then, Christmas Day, of course, but the intention will be to have buried this and forget all about it. And then, you know, you ask in a couple of weeks about the Gatwick drone and they go, what drone? Huh, don't remember that. Yeah. Never let a good crisis go to waste. Well, meanwhile, what's going on elsewhere, of course, is perhaps not dissimilar. And at Preston Road, of course, we've seen Quadrilla remove the frac pumps and the frac control unit, and using pretty much the same words that Third Energy used at Kirby Mispleton then when they removed their frac spread, and they said, yep, but we'll be back. Well, for Third Energy at Kirby Mispleton, that's not anytime soon. And now the onus, once again, is very much on Greg Clark. And notice I don't mention Claire Perry here, who's the sock puppet that Greg Clark put into the role of Minister of State for Business, Energy and Industrial Strategy in an attempt to protect him from political suicide, because he ultimately has responsibility for determining whether or not the unconventional hydrocarbons industry progresses or not in England. So this is a Greg Clark responsibility. And the reality is that Quadrilla have demonstrated complete incompetence in terms of being able to frack the first horizontal section without triggering seismic events. And of course, it's what I think it's 57 seismic events, and one of which was 1.5, which of course was the same level as the May 27th, 2011 seismic event, which eventually led to the activity at Priest Hall being shut down and the moratorium being put in place. Well, Quadrilla have now removed the frac kit from Preston New Road, because the bottom line is they know fine well that if they fired up the frac pumps again to try to stimulate that first well, they are running the risk of triggering something well in excess of 1.5, which would de facto be the end of unconventional hydrocarbon exploitation in the UK, period. So now Quadrilla are waiting to get the permission to frack the second well. And guess what? If Greg Clark gives that permission, then the reality is that the same thing is going to happen. I mean, isn't it, one of the signs of mental illness that, you adopt the same behaviour and expect a different result? Well, that's Quadrilla. Far be it for me to suggest that anyone at Quadrilla is mentally ill. We won't have a debate on that probably. But Francis Egan certainly wants to sustain his outrageous salary and benefits package for as long as he possibly can. So he will continue to do whatever it takes to, and say whatever it takes to try to get Greg Clark to sign off on the second well at Preston New Road. But, Greg, if you do that, once again, it's going to be your neck on the line. So there is a very, very good possibility that Quadrilla will not be bringing the frac spread back to Preston Road anytime soon. But the onus here is on the local community to really pile the pressure on Greg Clark and be asking, through Freedom of Information requests for detailed information as to, what has occurred and what reports have been submitted at Preston, or from Preston Road, over the last, barely 2 months. October the 15th, they started fracking, and in 2 months they've demonstrated a degree of incompetence that, only we could have predicted. Well, elsewhere, of course, across the other side of the Pennines, iGas have announced that they couldn't find the Boland Shale. And once again, anybody who believes that statement is perhaps not been following what's occurring. You know, looking at what has transpired, we saw the radioactive signs on the containers going in to Tinker Lane and out of Tinker Lane. Probably 2 weeks ago now. Well, consider the possibility that they were bringing in the cesium-137 to run some cement bond logs. Consider the possibility that iGas have experienced a very, very significant geological collapse around their well. A collapse so significant that it's not actually possible to cement the casing in place, and on that basis maybe have decided to simply abandon that well. Now, through my barrister, we asked iGas whether or not they had any awareness of the prospect that they were going to pull out of Tinker Lane during the injunction court hearing, which was, of course, last week. And, whether there was any awareness that they were experiencing any problems with the well whilst the court hearing was occurring. So the iGas legal team have responded now, stating that there was no awareness whatsoever about any problems with the well or about any intention to pull out of Tinker Lane during the court hearing. Now, that's the statement from their solicitors. And, now we'll have to see whether or not the Environment Agency, the Health and Safety Executive, and the Department for Business, Energy and Industrial Strategy and the Oil and Gas Authority all concur with that statement through the Freedom of Information requests that will now be submitted to them. And we'll see whether there's any correlation or not. If there is any discrepancy between the information coming from these sources, then I think there's a very good prospect that we'll be back in court and we will be challenging the integrity of iGas in bringing about the application for the injunction if they knew full well that the likelihood was that they were going to be pulling out of that site. And this is, of course, very similar to what occurred over in Upton, again with iGas, where they sought an eviction order from the camp that was on the field. They effectively insisted that Cheshire Police bring about an eviction, costing Cheshire Police in excess of £200,000. And then 5 days later announced, well, actually, we've got no intention of establishing any kind of presence on that field anyway. And of course, Cheshire Council have been trying to recover the cost of that police operation ever since. And basically, iGas have told them to go take a hike. Why are we not surprised? So, all in all, it's absolutely essential that people do take a look beyond the superficial narrative that is put out by the establishment. We are entering some very, very strange times where the likelihood of anybody working in the UK government or working within the corporatocracy is able to tell the truth. They work on the basis that the only way they can continue to function is to effectively lie, because they know fine well that an increasing number of people are starting to see through the charade. And, whether it's the yellow vests in France, which, of course, the establishment is desperately trying to undermine, and as that spreads elsewhere in Europe, and, of course, everyone tries to avoid the elephant in the room, which, of course, is the UN Treaty of Marrakesh, which was signed on December the 11th, which effectively commits the signatories to open border migration. And of course, just yesterday, the MP for Deutsche Bank, Saeed Javid, made the statement that the likelihood is that there will be open door unfettered immigration into the UK until at least 2025, which of course will effectively destroy the British economy. And why is it? Why is it that the stores in the high street and the online stores are tanking their prices right now? Why are we seeing 60, 70 and even 80% reduction on prices? It's because the stores have gambled on massive Christmas sales. But what might finally now be hitting home is that when you employ people on 0 hours contracts, on minimum wage or less, because for many of the immigrants, they are working for less than minimum wage because they're still a lot better off than they would be in their home country. And consequently, what this ultimately creates is a society that is literally living hand to mouth and certainly doesn't have any disposable income for the luxury goods or stuff that you don't really need in the stores right now. And people are totally maxed out on credit cards. And so if anybody hasn't bought anything yet, and you are and your family are not that hung up on celebrating Christmas on December 25th, wait until December 26th or 27th, because the stores are basically going to be giving stuff away because they're going to be so desperate to shift this stock that they've bought in for Christmas. And this is the start of an economic meltdown that can only be stopped by a systemic change in the way in which people participate in their governance. Because if you sit back and just let this happen, then let me tell you that the prognosis is not pretty by any stretch of the imagination. So it's down to each and every one of us to participate in the process and bring about the changes that we all know we need to see. Now, I will be back on Monday morning for what might well be my last broadcast of the year. Meanwhile, I'm going to go back and enjoy more hilarity at seeing what all the hacks who try and label themselves as journalists are writing about DroneGate. Meanwhile, you have a great day, and I will see you on Monday at 8:30. You take care now.